Okay, so if you are new to me, my name's Jessica and I run Just Creatives. I've been in business for 7 years and I do graphic and web design, and I also do some SEO. Every time I build a website for a client, part of that process also includes optimizing their website so that they can hopefully start showing up in search, because I believe that SEO is kind of like marketing that's free and done, like in the back end. I mean, it is ongoing, like it's not a one and done kind of thing, but it can really, if people start finding you and you don't have to be chasing, your clients, I feel like that's a win. And that I feel is, what SEO can help you do. So that's why I wanted to do this little workshop today so you guys can start optimizing your own websites. And this all is pretty simple stuff. It's not like you're going to have to overhaul your website or inject any code or, anything crazy. It's all simple things you can either, tweak now or things you can implement over the next few months. So that's just a little bit about me. And we're going to dive right in. So what is SEO exactly? Really, it's optimizing your content, and that means not just blogs and videos and podcasts. That just means the text on your website to hopefully get your website to show up in Google results. In layman's terms, I always tell my clients SEO is what people are searching for in Google when they're trying to find you or someone who does what you do. So that's going to be the most important thing to remember, is what are people actually searching? So for instance, I was doing a website audit the other day, and my client had her site title as brand imagery for emerging brands, which sounds really nice. But do you think people are actually searching that? Probably not. They're probably searching something more like brand photography for small businesses. Those are more of the layman's terms that people are using. This doesn't mean that you can't use more of that descriptive kind of text around your website. It's just when you are needing to optimize certain things around your website, which we'll talk about in just a little bit of where to use that, that's when you want to be really specific. So her site title and like using, optimizing certain things, that's when she would want to use brand photography for small businesses, whereas her homepage or maybe like a line on her about page, I mean, there's a lot of places she could put brand imagery for emerging brands. That, would give people a better feel if she thinks those words are a better fit for like her brand personality, if that makes sense. So another thing that I have to remind my clients of all the time is that SEO does not happen overnight. Like I said, I do the SEO. I optimize my clients' websites after I've designed it and before we launch it. And there's been a few times that a client has emailed me like a week later, and they're like, so I Googled myself or I Googled my keywords, but I'm not showing up. And I'm like, yeah, that's not how it works. It takes a lot of time, and there are a lot of factors that go into SEO. So even though if you do all the things I tell you today, it doesn't mean the very next morning you're going to Google yourself and show up in the results. It does take time. And like I said, there are a lot of factors that go into it. Domain age, so like how long ago did you buy that domain? Keywords in your domain, keywords in titles, keywords in descriptions, content length, pages that go over a topic. Like if you have multiple like blog posts that go over one topic. For me, I have a lot of blog posts that go over Squarespace, and I have a lot of blog posts that talk about WordPress. And Google likes seeing that, oh, like she talks about this a lot, that, builds authority within Google's, kind of algorithm. Whereas if I just talked about Squarespace once, they're going to be like, I mean, she talked about it once. It's not really impressive to them. It also, SEO thinks about page speed, image optimization, outbound links on your website. It even pays attention to grammar and spelling. Like they want to send people to quality websites. Mobile friendliness. This is super important. How mobile friendly is your website? Is it fast on mobile? Does it work well on mobile? Is it actually mobile friendly? Because not all websites are. Internal links, how many links do you have going between pages and posts within your own website? Broken links, do you have a lot of broken links? Like if you've ever, changed a page URL or a blog post URL, but you've linked to it somewhere else, if you don't fix that link, that's broken, obviously. Like people can't go to that place. Or even if you're linking to another website, like let's say you are trying to link to like, hey, I saw this great blog post, maybe you're doing like a blog post roundup or something, well, and you get the URL wrong, that's a broken link. So there are a lot, and I mean, that's just skimming the surface. Like there are hundreds of things that go into SEO. Not all of those factors have to be perfect. So don't feel like, oh my gosh, like this is going to take me months and years and I'm never going to rank. It's not that you have to get all these things perfect. It's just, there are a lot of different things that go into it. So it's not as simple as just saying, oh, I'm going to put my city and my title on my website and then I'll rank and that it'll be magic, because Google is a lot smarter and a lot more complex than that. So just keep that in mind. But we also want to talk about what SEO is not. It is not keyword stuffing a page or a blog post. We'll talk about this in a minute, but Google knows when you are just putting a paragraph of keywords either in a description or literally on a page or anything. Like you need to sound human. Google's robots are smart enough that you can just talk normal. You can talk like a human within your website and all your SEO settings, and that is good enough for them. You don't try and outsmart them by adding a ton of keywords. Invisible text. I haven't seen this in quite a while, but it used to be that a lot of people would like put a text box on their website and would somehow, one way or another, turn that text white so that like you and I couldn't see it, but the text was still technically there so Google could read it. So they, again, would just put like a paragraph of keywords and try and like trick Google's algorithm. Again, they are smart enough to pick up on that. So don't do that. Adding unrelated keywords to the page content. If you're just throwing in random keywords, like maybe you're adding in like other people's like competitors' names or something, or you're just make sure your keywords are related to the actual content, because like I sound like a broken record, but Google is smart enough to recognize if things are related or not. Paying for Google Ads. Now, a lot of people I've heard think, oh, if I pay for some Google Ads, which that means your website could show up like the first or second result. Like if you wanted to show up for like best bakery in Dallas, and you wanted to show up, you can tell that it's an ad, but you're at the very top, right? A lot of people think, well, if I pay for Google Ads, and obviously I'm paying to be up there, well, once I stop paying, like they'll still keep me on the first page. Not true. So don't feel like you need to pay for Google Ads to try and like get a step ahead, or that they'll like favor you in some way. I mean, they'll favor you while you're paying, but it doesn't really do anything once you stop paying. Link farms. So this is something, again, that I don't see a whole lot of happening anymore, but you used to be able to, and like, I mean, you still can, but it used to be kind of a popular, for whatever reason, practice to, like you would pay this random person and they would put a link to your website on like 50 websites. But these 50 websites were kind of shady. They were not related to you and your business at all. It was just random websites. And we'll talk about why link farms were a thing in a little bit, because there's a similar practice, but not shady, that can benefit you. And then the last thing is duplicate pages or websites. Again, I don't see a lot of this happening, but let's say you wanted to, like, let's say you have a page that's like smoothie recipes for moms. Well, some people might be like, oh, like, well, I really want to rank for smoothie recipes, so I'm just going to duplicate this page and all the same content, like all the same recipes, but title it smoothie recipes for dads. I'm going to do another one that's smoothie recipes for kids, and so on and so on. But it's the same exact content, just different titles. Again, Google will recognize that. Google does not like duplicate content. So sometimes people will do like a guest blog, and then they'll put that same blog content on their own website. Well, that's duplicate content, and Google doesn't like that. So also don't do that. Just an added little bonus tip right there. But these are some things that you don't need to do to your website. The one that I really see happening a lot is keyword stuffing on a page, which we'll talk about in just a second. So today we're going to go over 5 things you can do to boost your own SEO on your website. Number 1 is post more often. This is the number one thing I tell people when clients, when we're done, they're like, okay, so like, what could I be working on? What could I be doing to continue to work on my SEO? And I'm like, you got to start blogging or videos or even podcasts. But Google loves fresh content. They want to see that it's a reputable resource for people. And it doesn't have to be that you have to blog weekly. It doesn't have to be that you blog even daily. If you can only handle blogging once a month, that's totally fine. It would be better, though, if you're only doing once a month, to make sure it's a longer blog post, like 800 to 1,000 words or so, just so it's longer and more in depth, because that's giving Google more data, just more information for them to read. But even if you're not blogging, let's say you're like, I hate blogging, but I love video or I love podcasting, that's great. You should embed those videos or those podcast episodes on your website, like into a blog post. I used to I would embed my blog post embed my videos into their own blog posts and just add like a few paragraphs to give context. It wasn't like a full-fledged blog post. It was just like, hey, like a lot of people have been asking me about this, blah, 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 whatever. Or like, this is why this matters. That's why I'm talking about this today. You need to think about X, Y, and Z. So you could do that. With podcasts, you could embed the podcast episode and then put the transcript of the entire episode. That's a lot of data. That's a lot of text that you don't actually have to write. You just copy and paste it, and it gives Google a lot of text for them to read. And hopefully your podcast episodes you're talking about, topics that would include keywords. Like for me, I have a podcast episode soon talking about like Squarespace and WordPress and other website platforms. And so if you are, since I talk about Squarespace and WordPress a lot, that's just giving Google more data. Like I'm getting more little like brownie points on my scorecard because they're like, oh yeah, like here's more content about Squarespace and WordPress because that text is there. So post more often, figure out what's sustainable for you, but at least once a month is going to be ideal. And I just clicked on the wrong thing on my screen. Here we go. Number 2, this is something a lot of people don't know. Format correctly. So Google pays attention to how you format the text on your website. So this doesn't mean like it has to be a certain font or color or anything like that. It's not that specific. But most of you, I would say almost all of you, should have the capability within your website themes or your platform where you have like normal or body text, and then heading 1, heading 2, and heading 3. You might even have more than that. A Squarespace, I know, has 1, 2, and 3. And it's sometimes you'll see it as H1. That just means heading 1, or H2, whatever. WordPress, some of the themes have more, like my theme has like all the way to heading like 6 or 7, which is a little much. We don't need that many headings. But Google pays attention. So if you can, within your pages, make certain lines of text, does not need to be your entire website. I do not want to pull up any of your websites tomorrow and see, that heading 1, like your entire website text is heading 1 or heading 3, whatever. Not necessary. Again, Google will be smarter than that. But one, this is also good for creating hierarchy. This, from a design standpoint, this makes it easier to read your pages. Think about like when you had textbooks, like in high school or college. Think about like when you would open a new chapter. The chapter title was probably the largest. And then you had section titles. So then those were a little bit smaller. And then you might have subsections under that, and those were a little bit smaller. And then you might have like call outs or whatever else are in textbooks. And those are even smaller. And then under that is the body text, just the regular paragraphs. It made it easier for you to like skim through the textbook. I mean, I know we were all like reading the entire textbook, but you know what I mean. But it makes it easier. And the same applies to your website. That hierarchy within your website makes it easier. And it should go in order. So like if you have like the page title at the top, that should be the largest. Doesn't need to be huge. I'm not saying that, but it should be the largest. Then let's say on your services page, you have like your different packages. Those package names should then be, like heading 2. And then if you want to have like little headers of like investment or what's included, whatever, then that could be heading 3. That's kind of the breakdown of like when I say go in order, make it from top to the bottom on the page or within different sections, use them in order. So don't use like heading 3 at the top of your page and then heading 1 like down here. Just creates better hierarchy. But Google pays attention. So if you can use keywords within, like let's say a lot of times people will have like a banner image and then a line under that with like services page, or maybe it says like website design. Like for me, it might say that. If I can have that text that says website design in heading 1 or heading 2, Google is going to pick up on that, and it just is kind of like bonus points within your text. So hopefully that makes sense. It's kind of hard to explain. I could have put a screenshot here now that I'm thinking about that, but hopefully that kind of makes sense. Just trying to use those keywords, but then format them when appropriate so it makes sense and it looks nice. And that can also help with your SEO. Number 3, reduce your bounce rate. So have you guys ever pulled up to, like you're going to go out to eat and maybe there's 2 restaurants side by side and one is packed and the other one is completely empty. And at first you might be like, oh, like this one's packed. Do we really want to wait? Go there, whatever. And so you think about going here, but then you're like, wait, why is no one there? Are people not eating there because it's not good food or not good service? Like it might make you hesitant. So Google kind of has that same thought of like, are people not going there or are people leaving a lot? So if you haven't heard the term bounce rate before, it basically means people go to your website and immediately leave. Like they don't scroll down the page, or maybe they sit there for like 2 or 3 seconds and read it and they're like, oh, I'm in the wrong website. Like this wasn't what I was looking for. We've all done that. You're trying to find like a good recipe or, whatever, but you're like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was. Next, so there are a few things that you can do to improve your bounce rate. First, no mobile pop-ups. So you should have the capability within your plugins, or like on Squarespace, you can disable it on mobile. If your newsletter plugin does not have the option to disable on mobile, use a different one. Google will penalize you for using mobile pop-ups. They don't like it, and your users don't like it. I don't know if any of you have experienced a pop-up when you're looking on your phone at a website, but sometimes, you know, like the box will go like past the screen and you're like, where's the X button? Like, I can't find it. So make sure that you don't do mobile pop-ups. Desktop pop-up should be exit intent. That's another setting that you should be able to enable. This means that they can detect that when someone's like going to click out or go to the, you know, do something else, then the pop-up will show up. If you don't want to do that, you can also usually set like, don't show pop-up for X amount of seconds. Because a lot of people, I know we've all experienced this, you go to a website and immediately there's a pop-up and you're like, I just want to read the blog post. So give them like 10 to 15 seconds or do the exit intent. That will help reduce your bounce rate. The other thing is make sure your site speed is fast, because we live in a microwave society. So that means a lot of us are impatient. We don't like, I mean, I know we probably like using slow cookers to cook. If anyone has an Instapot, I really want one for Black Friday. You know, we want things fast. That's why everyone loves Instapots, because we all want to cook faster. So again, if people are sitting there waiting for your website to load, like yesterday I went to someone's website and I literally, it took like 12 seconds, I think. I'm not exaggerating. And this person is like an influencer. And I was like, girlfriend needs a new host or something. And then make sure your homepage is clear about what you do. Because again, when people are like, oh, I don't think I'm in the right place, this isn't the recipe I was looking for, this isn't the person I was looking for, like, I'm, you know, they might be like, oh, I'm looking for a graphic designer or whatever. And they were like, is this a graphic design? I don't know. I can't tell if that's what she does. Let me go to another website. You want to make it super clear what you do up front. So that can also help reduce that bounce rate. I usually say to try and like, if I were to like walk up to you and show you a homepage, like maybe my homepage or any website, you should be able to like look at it for 5 seconds and I close the laptop and say like, what do they do? What's their business? That should be, you know, tell them, like it shouldn't have to be a paragraph at the top because people are like, what? I don't want to read that yet. Make it super clear. These things will help reduce the bounce rate. Because again, Google's like, if everyone's going to Haviland's website, I see Haviland is here still. So if everyone's going to Haviland's website and leaving immediately, like something's wrong with Haviland's website. Like either it's slow, maybe it's spammy, like there could be a lot of things, and Google's like, I don't know, like some red flags, people aren't sticking around. They're going to pay attention to that. So really important to work on your bounce rate. You can also, if you're like, well, I don't even know what my bounce rate is, you can look at this in your Google Analytics. I don't know off the top of my head. I should have included that little note. But you can, if you Google like how to find my bounce rate, there are probably a bajillion tutorials or instructions on how to find that. But you can find your bounce rate in Google Analytics. Number 4, use keywords correctly. So this is what I was talking about earlier with don't keyword stuff. So there are websites out there, particularly doctors, I've noticed, but there are, you know, other business owners or business websites that do this too, where it's like, I'm an Atlanta photographer and I photograph Atlanta families in Atlanta. So if you need a family photo in Atlanta, I am your Atlanta photographer available for photos in Atlanta. And I'm like, this does not sound natural. And you are just trying to show up for your keywords in photographer in Atlanta. So there's no need to do that. It's not that you, like, you know, you might be like, well, what's the appropriate amount? What sounds natural? That's what I always defer to. What sounds natural in a sentence? Because again, don't underestimate how smart Google is, because they can pick up on that. This is also not to pick on photographers, but there are a lot of people who will, like, on their homepage, photographers, usually at the bottom, will just list out like all the cities in their area, because again, they think, oh, if I just put these keywords here, it'll help pick me up in all these different cities. So whether it's Atlanta or Marietta, or, you know, like all these different areas in this general vicinity, then they think, oh, this will like help me show up. No. But also think about your related keywords. So again, we want to think about, what are people searching? Well, part of the problem is you might not know what people are searching exactly. So for instance, most of my work now is web design. I also do graphic design, like logos and books and PDFs and all that jazz. But most of the time when people find me in Google searches, I always ask like what they were searching. And I'd say 99% of the time they say Atlanta graphic designer. Even though I'm doing web design, they find me searching graphic design. So for me, related keywords would be graphic design, web design, logo design, book design, PDF design, you know, all those kinds of things. So it might be like, I had a client who was a pelvic health coach. So we had pelvic health coach, women's health coach, her city, I think it was like Denver health coach, you know, things like that. So think about related keywords. What are other things that people might use to define what you do? And use those around your website. And the other part about using keywords correctly is not just this with the overstuffing and all that, but also think about, you want to use your keywords in your page titles and in your page descriptions. You can also, again, if it sounds natural, use it within your page itself. That's always good too. But really think about your page titles and page descriptions. With WordPress, you can adjust this with the Yoast plugin. It's a free plugin, and it allows you to change the SEO title and description of a page. So that way, you know, your navigation can still say like home, about, blog, services, you know, stuff like that. But the SEO titles will be more descriptive. So it won't just say about, it might say about Just Creatives, Atlanta graphic designer. Or might, you know, like graphic and web design services rather than just services. But with Yoast, that is just like on the back end. So your navigation is not going to be super cluttered with about Just Creatives or, you know, like graphic design services. It's not going to have like 10 words up there because it only shows on the back end and to Google, if that makes sense. With Squarespace, you don't have like a plugin like Yoast, but what you can do is change the page title. So in Squarespace, you have the navigation title, which is what appears on the front end to like you and me. And then you have the page title. There are two boxes right on top of each other under page settings. And so navigation title, you can keep that super simple, just about, blog, whatever. And then page title underneath, that's where you can put the SEO description or the SEO title, sorry. That's where you can put that to be more descriptive and include more keywords, if that makes sense. If you're on another platform, I really only work with Squarespace and WordPress. So if you're on another platform, you will just have to figure that out. I'm assuming that might be a similar situation to Squarespace where they should have a kind of navigation title and then maybe SEO settings somewhere else. So you'll just kind of have to do some investigating to see like where those SEO settings are. Now, within using the keywords correctly, I wanted to give you a few examples of how you might be able to use those keywords. So we want to look at how you can audit your own SEO. So the very first thing I want to say is open an incognito window in your browser. You can do this by going to File, and then there should be a drop down that says like New Window, and then New Incognito Window. Okay, so you want to use the incognito. This basically makes you anonymous. Otherwise, Google keeps track of all the things you search, all the websites you go to, so they tailor your search results a little bit based on where you go. Well, you probably visit your website fairly often. And so they're going to show you like, yeah, here you are, here's your website. So you want to search yourself incognito. This is where you can kind of test and see how you are ranking for your keywords and how your site appears in search results. So here's one example, Elizabeth Oates, home. So what I would say here is that Elizabeth should give us more context in the title. Like having Elizabeth Oates home doesn't tell me, like, is she a blogger? Is she a business owner? Is she a personal brand? Is she Oprah? Like, who is she, you know? So this is where I would say, like, Elizabeth Oates, you know, marriage blogger, mother, you know, mom blogger, whatever she is. And then the type or the description, it does tell me a little bit about her site, but again, this is where we want to give keywords because that's going to help her Google ranking. So if she's really trying to target, you know, other moms or wives or whoever, she would want to include those keywords in the description. So it could be like, welcome to the space where I write for moms or anything like that. So that's one example. Another one is, this is my friend Jenny. So she has really good keywords in her title and description. You can see right there, brand and marketing strategist for wedding industry. Well, it trails off to creatives. The problem is the keywords are great for both the title and description, but her description is really short because you have, I want to say it's like 160 characters or so. I mean, you saw it on Elizabeth right here. She has 2 full lines, and she could probably add a few more words on that second sentence to use up all of her available characters, whereas Jenny just has this 1 line. So she has a lot more space she can use to add more keywords, add more of a description. It could be like to help them increase their income or, you know, start a business, be better on Instagram, whatever. And that's just going to help her search, you know, or not search. It's going to help her site pull up and search more. And here's another one. So this one is really, really, I mean, super close to being like spot on. What I would change here is instead of it saying Alexa fitness homepage, I would just change that to say like fitness for moms and take out homepage. We don't need to know what page it is. So again, just making that title really clear. And her description is great. She talks about like pregnant and new moms, so that's really good. And then like during pregnancy and beyond, like that's all great. The only thing I may add is if she were to be someone who trains, because a lot of personal trainers work locally, then I would say if you're someone who trains locally, add your city into the description and or the page title. Both of those would be good. So if you are someone who works locally, that's something else. Like I work with people all over the country and the world, but I have Atlanta in my title and description because, I mean, I can work with Atlanta people, and that just gives me an easier market to rank in. Whereas if I'm just trying to rank my website for graphic designer, and there are about 1 billion graphic designers, so it's going to take me a while to do that. Whereas even though there are probably thousands of designers in Atlanta, it's easier to rank within thousands as opposed to millions, if that makes sense. So even if you don't work with people locally, if there are potential clients in your local area, then don't be afraid to add your location into your title and description. And like, I honestly don't actually live in Atlanta. I live in a suburb, but people in our area generally just say Atlanta. It's not often that they're like, man, I really want a designer in Lawrenceville. They're just searching the general area because we have a big metro area and people just kind of, you know, it's not like a big deal to drive 40 minutes over to the other suburb or, you know, whatever. So, and again, I work virtually, so that doesn't even matter either. So it kind of depends on your area. If you live in a metro area, then it might be easier to just use whatever the biggest city is next to you. Or if you're like kind of in a smaller area and there's not like a huge city, then just use the actual town. Like if you live 5 hours from Dallas, don't use Dallas in your title, you know, like use the town you actually live in. So number 4, get more features. So this is really, really helpful because if you've ever heard the phrase, you are the sum of, or you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, like literally, like physically spend your most time with, that kind of applies to your SEO as well. So this is where you want to really focus on guest blogging and being on podcasts that are reputable. And I want to say high ranking, but it's really hard to judge like how like how high ranking are they, like that's hard to like gauge, like, oh man, are they ranking or not, like who knows. But I'm saying like if your next door neighbor has just started a blog and you know they're like, oh, I want to feature you, like that's fine. It's just not really going to have any SEO benefit. It's not a bad thing to have another feature. That's fine. It's just not going to give you much of a boost. Whereas if you get a feature on BuzzFeed, that would be great. And I'm not saying that like literally it's only like major brands that you know need to be featured on, but just know that like if it's a new blogger or a new website, it may not have as much clout to it. Whereas if it's something that has a lot of visitors and that kind of thing, that's going to give you a better boost. I usually like to look at how many like social media followers that page will have, and then kind of gauge that. Like if it's something like a brand that has like 300 followers, I'm like, it's not that, and I know it sounds like pretentious. I'm not saying I would be like, you only have 300 followers, so I'm not going to blog for you, because that's not the case. But it's just, you know, like it's more if I'm pitching somebody, if I'm trying to find blogs to pitch. If someone approaches me and says, we would love to have you, whatever, then, you know, that would be more of like, this is something that it's really going to pay off, like how much of a time investment is going to take. But if I'm pitching them, like I want to find websites that have more of an online presence so I get a bigger ROI, if that makes sense. So that applies to guest blogs, podcasts, and I've seen a lot this year, people doing like joint or collaborations on YouTube, either doing like a joint live or anything like that. So that can be really good. I mean, even like Facebook Lives can still kind of be beneficial, but that's harder to link to. So it's still beneficial for your brand, just not so much the SEO. But the key is when you are featured, you need to link to it on your website. This is a huge mistake that a lot of people make when they are featured and then they just don't share it online and then they don't link to it anywhere. So just pay attention, like make sure you're linking, because it's going to give you that SEO boost, because Google says, oh, like she was over here, they linked to her and they're linking, like, oh, like she's on this reputable website. It kind of like builds everyone up. So, really pay attention to that. And something on kind of a related note, I'm launching a group program in January called Content to Clients. And one of the things we're going to dive into is creating content that gets you clients and that is strategic, that you're not just like churning out blog posts, not seeing any results, but also like how to get on other blogs, how to get on podcasts, and how to find the right ones, because not all podcasts are created equally. Not all blog features are equal. Some are better than others, and you want to find the ones that are going to have the biggest impact on your business, whether that means clients or whether that means exposure. Like being on BuzzFeed may not bring you a lot of clients. I mean, it may, who knows? Depends on your business and your clients and all that. But it might be really good authority building for your brand when they see, oh my gosh, like they've been featured here and there, and like she's a big deal. So that's just something to think about. So this is launching in January. Enrollment's open through the end of the year. You can go to my website and check it out if that's something that might interest you, as we're talking about features and whatnot. So, and my 5th slide is gone. Where is, well, I'm just rocking this workshop today, guys. Let me see if I can remember what that 5th, does anybody have any questions about anything I've said today, whether it was the factors of SEO, the content, the keywords, the formatting? Does anybody have questions? Oh, that's why I can't find Risa, thank you. Oh, there I see. Okay, that's why I was like, wait a minute, why am I? Thank you, Risa. See, I totally have it together, guys. I'm just being real here today, you know? It just happens. We all mess up, right? Does anybody have any questions? I'm happy to answer, whether it's something I covered in SEO, if you have questions about stuff you've heard, questions about your website platform, blog posts, videos, anything, I would be happy to answer questions. I want to make sure you feel confident in your SEO after this. Anybody? I'm going to take a drink of water. But we're doing good on time. I like these workshops to last like an hour or less. So you're not like sitting around for 2.5 hours listening to me ramble on and on. Anybody have questions? Risa, I have a question about blog post length. Neil Patel says that high-ranking posts average 1890 words. That's very specific, unless that's a typo, which is a ton of words. What do you think of that advice? That is a lot of words. I will say, like, I mean, the really high-ranking posts usually are around 1,000. Like a 300-word blog post is just not going to rank. I mean, unless it is like uber specific and it's a topic that like not a lot of people like are blogging about. So I would say, yeah, aim for like 1,000 words, especially if you are only blogging like once a month or every other week or something like that. If you're blogging more frequently, I think you can focus less on the length. Again, I think it needs to be more than 300 words because the number of words, that's just giving a ton of data to Google. So yeah, but I would also say, and I hope Neil said this somewhere, that like if you can write a quality post that's 1,800 words, that's great. But if you're writing an 1,800 word post that is iffy, if it's just kind of like, like this is a lot of fluff material and that kind of thing, that's not going to be super beneficial. Haviland said, where do you go again in Squarespace to change your web page descriptions? Haviland, are you talking about the individual pages or your site as a whole? I just want to be sure did I tell you whichever one you're talking about? Site as a whole. So you can do this in 2 places. It's under settings, and then Squarespace just changed their menu like last week. So I'm going to try and tell you the right description. I used to know it like the back of my hand, but I think it's settings and now marketing. No, marketing is its own tab now. See, I'm super confused. Marketing is its own tab, and then there is SEO, but also you can put the site description under settings and then basic info. I'm pretty sure that is where the 2 places are. Again, I'm sorry, but Squarespace just changed their menu, and I'm trying to like remember where everything is moved now because they totally changed things around. If those instructions are not correct, feel free to shoot me an email and okay, good. I'm like, I've been working in Squarespace for a client the last few weeks. So it's like, and it changed in the middle of the process. And I was like, oh, where is everything? Using SEO tab. Sweet. Talitha said, for SEO and product descriptions for products that are very similar, how do I avoid using the same keywords over and over again? Or is that okay since they're individual? That is a little bit trickier. With that, I wouldn't worry. Like, you're going to use the same keywords over and over again. And since they're products, that's a little bit different. As much as you can try to use different words, that's where related keywords would come in handy. So you could, I'm trying to like think of an example of like toilet paper and tissue paper, like those might be interchangeable, or like hair tie, hairband, ponytail holder, like you could use different things that way. If you can think of kind of related words, that might be beneficial. I don't think Google will ding you for having identical product descriptions. You might also just try kind of rewriting the sentence, even if it's pretty similar, if you're just saying it in a different kind of way. I don't know if that makes sense, but like just instead of like, I like pizza, pizza is a food I like, like that kind of thing. Here I go talking about food again. Stacy said, what about number of words on a regular page on your website? Regular words, that would be, I think the recommended is around 600 words on a page. Again, like you may not have 600 words to put on every single page, but if all of your pages only have like 1 paragraph, that's not going to give Google a lot of data, So again, you want it to be quality copy. You want it to be with keywords that sound natural, not like spammy. But yeah, so if there's, if you can, certain pages have more than others, then that's what I would aim for. But don't try to like sit here and come up with 600 words and you're like, this page just sounds ridiculous because I'm just trying to find 600 words, it's just some pages will have more than other. Like an FAQ page. An FAQ page may only have like 5 or 6 questions. So that may only be like 300 words. Well, that's fine. Like, it's not a big deal. It's not the end of the world. Lisa said, where can you research related keywords? So Google Keyword Finder is where I would suggest going. It's a free tool. It may sometimes prompt you like, oh, start a campaign. If that happens, I've heard if you literally just run like a $1 ad, like a $1 campaign for like a day, then okay, good. And then it'll like let you in. I've never had the issue of going into Google Keyword Finder and like it asking me to do a campaign, but I hear that problem all the time. So I don't know if, I don't know why I don't have that problem and some people do. I'm just warning you if you get prompted that, that might happen. Just FYI. But yeah, that's the other thing that can be helpful is let me find the name of it. I have it installed. It's a Chrome plugin. Which one is it? That one. It's Keywords Everywhere. Keywords Everywhere Chrome extension. So just Google that and you'll see, and well, this is if you use Google Chrome, but it's a plugin. And so when you search things in Google, it will then have this little like side panel that will show you all this data about keywords, and that will also show you related keywords. So that's super handy. So if you use Google Chrome, definitely check out that. It's kind of fun to see all this like data about search results and keywords and that kind of stuff.